Show me the money.
Just looking good, but I think I'm taking too long.
Back with a spot for a Glock. I took a loss over frost, but still got a knock.
Money! Jerry, does that make you feel good just to say that?
All right, show me the money. NFL picks for Week 18 are here. A little delayed this week. I respect for the Damar Hamlin situation. Joining me today to do the picks here is Giants are going to the playoffs. Happy New Year, Phil Lombardo.
Happy New Year, Mike. It's a pleasure to be back on. It's been too long.
It certainly has been too long. So we're kicking off 2023. Obviously, we pushed back a little bit in the week after what happened with Damar Hamlin here. It's definitely encouraging that as of recording time, still like he's heading in the right direction. We heard today that he is now awake. He's communicating with via written methods with his doctors and the family members. And I did think it was cool when they said today that first things he asked me when he woke up was, did we win? Then they said, you won, Damar. You won it live. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Something heartwarming, definitely wholesome moment that we all needed after what happened. Because, I mean, let's be real. That was one of the most unsettling things anybody has ever witnessed, sports fan or not.
Yeah.
To see what all those young men were going through, just huddled around him, and the uncertainty that brought to the situation was just it was a lot to handle.
Yeah, it certainly was here. I think the right call was made right now. Obviously, in the moment, I don't know where the 5 minutes came from, the warm-up period, but cooler heads prevailed. They did not resume the game. They are not resuming the game here. I think, considering what these two teams went through, I think it's the correct call not to force that game in.
Yeah, and you know, it's easy in the moment to let emotions get the best of you and say that the NFL really botched the initial reaction. I think that we have to give them credit for getting the decision right in the end, but also really though what bothers me is that it always feels like money is coming first with the NFL. It always feels like ratings are coming first. It was a little perturbing, just a little irksome. Sometimes it kind of shows that some of these NFL executives and just higher level management people in the NFL are just kind of out of touch. But you know what? I think they got the point got across to them, and I don't think they'll be making a mistake like this ever again.
Yeah, I don't think they will either here. And I do think I don't know how much of the ESPN coverage did you stick with while it was going on?
I watched it pretty much all the way through because I was just in shock during the whole thing. I was trying to process it, and I wanted to hear what everybody had to say. So I watched it all the way through Scott Van Pelt and Ryan Clark, and I thought that was some of the most eloquent speaking on air I've ever heard between Scott and Ryan. So, I mean, kudos to them. I also thought Booger McFarland, being a former player, had a lot of really insightful things to say. So I thought just, you know, as a whole, ESPN did a great job, and I have a hard time giving ESPN credit these days with a lot of the stuff they do. But I thought they handled the situation in the moment as well as you possibly could.
Yeah, I think they absolutely did here. I mean, there was no speculating. There was no, rampantly guessing about, stuff that didn't matter in the moment. It was just more of hey, here's what's going on. Let's, speak from the heart. I thought they did a great job with that compared to, some other networks which either did not cover it in the moment, and NFL Network gets a big whiff on this because they just were replaying a football life and not going live and updates going in here, or I give Fox the demerit too for the whole Skip Bayless thing. But the fact they let Skip come back on there after his very insensitive tweet and barely be that wasn't even really an apology what he did.
No, it seems like he was just brushing things aside. Skip's always been a guy who's all about clickbait, right? He's always about getting a rise out of people. He's always about saying things that teeter on the line of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But there comes a point where you just have to be a human being. You set that character that you're paid to play aside, and you just act like a human. And he just never seems to really take advantage of that. You know, when people can see him in a different light, he's always going to be the Skip that's on television, right? The one that we see and you either like or really don't like. In my case, I don't really care for him. He's not my taste. But I thought that it wasn't really about what he said. It was the fact that he just didn't set football aside. Just a man's life is in the balance here. Skip, can you wait 30 minutes to tweet something? Can't you just wait to talk about the game or what they should do about the game till tomorrow? Do you have to tweet 10 minutes after it happens? That's really what I thought. I thought the timing was just awful. And the fact that he's just so stubborn that he can't just admit fault, it goes to show. I mean, and you can see that him and Shannon Sharp seem to be on the outs. I mean, they already had their issue a few months ago when he was talking about Shannon not being as good as Tom Brady, as weird as that sounds, comparing the two. So they were already a little bit on the fence with their relationship. I think this is just kind of the nail in the coffin when it comes to Undisputed.
Yeah, I mean, Skip's not wrong for thinking it. Skip is wrong for, like, that's the moment I got to talk about it. Like, everybody else, I watched ESPN next day a little bit too. I mean, like, they didn't really talk about the meaning of what happened in this game until Wednesday. Like, that was, I felt the appropriate time period to, start having that discussion.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think many people would have said something if he tweeted something about the game middle of the next day. I really don't. Sure, maybe some people would have said maybe too soon. Let's wait to see if we hear anything positive about Hamlin's situation first before we address anything else. But I think the fact that he just didn't wait at all was just it disgusted me personally, and I thought that he really deserved to be suspended by Fox at the very least. But who knows what's going through their minds.
Yeah, enough about Fox though, and let's shift gears a little bit over to the Giants here, and I talked to our friend Dan DiMartini last week. He correctly called. He said this game they're going to be in it for the first quarter of the Colts, and then the Giants going to be running away and throwing confetti in the second quarter. That's exactly what happened here. What's your big takeaway from the Giant Colt game?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you know me. I'm a season ticket holder, have been for 20 years. And the atmosphere at MetLife was about as electric as it's been since 2016 when they went 7-1 at home, made the playoffs, and then the inevitable I'm on a boat, the wide receiver picture. We all know it. They haven't made the playoffs since. But you know what? Now they're back in. And, this is what I took away from the game. There's three things. Number one, Daniel Jones. He silenced a lot of doubters. I think he played his best game as a professional. Passes were sharp. He was extremely opportune in the run game, and he didn't make any mistakes. The chance he received at the end of the game by the crowd were well-deserved, and it's got to feel great for a guy who's had plenty of struggles, taken his criticism, but he's kept his head down. He's worked hard to earn the respect of his teammates, coaches, fans, and honestly, the league itself. On the other side of the ball, I mean, who doesn't love a good comeback story? And I mean, Landon Collins, this guy was completely written off. He didn't have a job at the beginning of the season. He was not great, getting hurt towards the end of his 4-year contract, I believe, with Washington. The Giants pick him up, but they say, you know what? We don't have a connection to you because the Dable Shane campaign, they don't have a connection to Landon Collins. Only the Giants organization as a whole does. So they said, come back, earn your keep, work hard, and maybe we can find a spot for you on the roster. He earned his way back in about 4 weeks, and he didn't pout. He just went to work. Then the last 3 games, he's played about half the defensive snaps, hit a sack against Minnesota, and then, of course, he blows the game wide open with a pick six to just the crowd exploded. It was not only just the fact that the Giants were up 21-3 for the first time, God knows when, but it was also the fact that Landon Collins is somebody who is beloved in New York. When we lost him, that was like a gut punch because he was the heart and soul of the defense in 2016. If you remember, he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I think he finished 3rd in the voting that season. So that's just a guy that was a key. He was a cog in the Giants D, and to have him back on the field, not only just on the field, but having success and making game-changing plays, it was incredible. And lastly, just one more thing, Isaiah Hodgins. I want to point out Isaiah Hodgins. He was drafted by the Bills. He's been on the Bills for a couple of years, kind of back and forth between the practice squad and whatnot. But I think the Giants have something in this guy. He's 6'4", 210 pounds. He has a knack for finding the soft spots in the zone, which when you have a guy like Daniel Jones who uses his legs to extend plays, it's so important to have a big body that can find those soft spots because Daniel Jones continues to find them week after week. He scored touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 games. And what he did against Patrick Peterson, not only stat-wise, I think it was 8 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown, but he was playing the mental game. This is a guy that's barely played in the league. He's been, like I said, back and forth from practice squad to at the bottom of the depth chart. And he's jawing at Patrick Peterson, and not only jawing, but backing up that smack talk. scoring touchdown, catching a bunch of balls. And it makes Giants fans almost forget about that joker Kenny Galladay. We paid him $72 million, but I think maybe they have something in Hodgins to kind of fill that role that they've needed, because the Giants haven't had a big body like that since Plaxico Burress. Plaxico Burress was somebody who I think Eli tremendously benefited from when it comes to his growth as a quarterback. Having a guy where you can really rely on as a safety net like that is huge for the development of a young guy. I know DJ's not that young, but got to bring back Hodgins next year. Really got to give him a shot to win a starting role, because I think he has the tools that you want in a one or a two.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with all that stuff here. And for you, I got to say, going into this year, I'm sure there was no scenario in your mind that said, oh, the Giants are going to be a playoff team this year. I'm sure you probably thought, oh, maybe, schedule's kind of soft. Maybe they'll win like 6-7 games, like be heading in the right direction. I don't think there's any scenario in your wildest dream you said, you know what, this is going to be a playoff team.
I'm not going to say that I was confident in them being a playoff team, but when they started out the way they did, it wasn't the most shocking thing I've seen, because I saw quickly after week one what the culture that Brian Daboll was not only creating, but just his demeanor on the sidelines, the way he coached. Them going for 2 against Tennessee at the end of the first game, not only that, but coming back and then going for 2 to win the game and actually converting it. That wasn't Giants like. That wasn't what any coaches in previous years that we Giants fans have seen have done. So once I saw that, it completely changed my mindset. And I was like, all right, well, you know what? If they can start winning games like this consistently, maybe there is a chance they sneak into the playoffs. And you know what they did? I'm happy that they clinched last week, because you're not really sneaking in when you clinch a week before. You're in. You don't have to backdoor your way into the 7th seed. They're a 6th seed. They're cemented in. I think it's just something to build off of, because I want to just talk about the fact that, obviously the Giants dominated in all 3 facets of the game against the Colts. That's the kind of stuff that winning teams do. Not teams that are just borderline, we don't know what they are. This is how you develop a culture. You say, all right, we're going to smack a team in the mouth that doesn't want to be there. They've been checked out for the last few weeks. We don't let them hang around. Maybe the first couple of drives, they have a little bit of momentum, but as soon as they make that first mistake, bam, we take advantage of it. That's exactly what they did. So proud of them. I think Brian Daboll is far and beyond what we could have ever imagined as a head coach, and I think he's going to be here for years to come.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And obviously, right now, they're going into Sunday. The game is meaningless against the Eagles. The Eagles are trying to go for home field. Giants cannot move up or down from 6. They are locked in here. Would you expect them to, sort of take the foot off the gas here and rest up some guys? I can't blame them, because they've been banged up so much all season long.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants and the Jets, I'm going to bring up your Jets here too, just always seem to have the worst injury luck of all time. I know every fan's going to say that, and I could probably agree with that. Like, I'm over-exaggerating, but the Giants have been ravaged with injuries all season. Still haven't gotten Adoree Jackson back. We just got Xavier McKinney back, which is huge for that defense. My opinion, I'm not saying sit everybody, but sit all the key guys. There's going to be a few guys that I want, that are maybe young, rookies like Thibodeau or Neal that you want to get their reps. So maybe you play them for a small part of the game, maybe first half, but you're not there. You're not there in Philly to win the game. You just put the guys out there. You try to just not get embarrassed, but we can't afford to take any injuries, because the Giants are going to be going into either San Francisco, but more likely looking like Minnesota. And they were this close. They were a 61-yard field goal away from beating Minnesota a few weeks back. So if you want to have a chance of winning that game, you got to be healthy. And you know what? Adoree Jackson looks like he'll be coming back by the playoffs. So if they just kind of sit everybody and let it ride, I think Giants fans will be more than content with 9-7-1 and a playoff berth.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that here. And we'll put the Giants aside now here. Before we get to the picks here, I wanted to sort of discuss the Week 18 scheduling here. I mean, take Bills-Bengals out of it, because that's a whole separate issue here. But the league made some very strange choices here. Like, even before the Monday night game happened here, I thought putting the Raiders on Saturday the Chiefs and Raiders on Saturday did not make much sense because they were trying to, go for the ratings as opposed to like keeping it fair for the playoff home field situation here, because there was a scenario that the Bills-Bengals got completed where the Bills knew their fate. They could lay down that game against the Patriots, which would potentially impact the wild card race. And B, like the big more agrees on me is like putting Packers-Lions on Sunday Night Football here, because they should have been at the same time as Seattle, because if Seattle wins, Detroit's out before they even take the field, and that's kind of messed up for Seattle, where they might get a team that doesn't get much of an effort.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Aaron Rodgers treatment, right? He's the biggest star to get into the playoffs. He's a quarterback. He's had a lot of success, big name. That's what they're doing here. It's not the Packers treatment. It's the Aaron Rodgers treatment. Jordan Love was the starting quarterback of the Packers. Would they be doing this? Probably not. If anything, I think the Lions are the best story. If you want to go by storyline, what's a more likable story or a likable team than Dan Campbell's Lions? I mean, these guys scratch and claw their way back from the doldrums. I think were they 1-6, and now they're battling for the final playoff spot in the NFC, and I think that's just awesome. So, I mean, I would love to see Detroit in, and then who wouldn't? Because I don't think I know that Green Bay's been playing great football the last few weeks, but I don't see them winning games. I don't see them having an impact. The Lions, they could be a little more of a difficult out. I really think that competitively, but also it's hard to say what to expect from that game on a Sunday night. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but you know how it is this time of year in Lambeau. That's a tough game to win. Like, that couldn't be a more crummy situation for anybody but the Packers.
Yeah, that's the thing that just annoys me, is that like all we hear about is the we for years like we gotta do competitive balance the last week of the season. We got the game at the most mean here. They had the one game that was win or ring was the AFC South final game, and they said we want no part of that on Sunday Night Football. NBC probably didn't want to use it. We'll just punt it on Saturday and just sort of screw everybody else that way, just to get maximize the ratings. So I don't ever want to hear the NFL saying again that it's about competitive integrity when they chose the ratings.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think it was a little cowardly, if I could use another word, for them not to put the Titans Jags on Sunday night. But what are you going to do at this point?
Yeah, nothing you can do at this point. Hopefully, I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to be upset on Sunday, whether it's the Dolphins, whether it's the Steelers, whether it is the Lions, the Seahawks. Somebody's going to be pissed off with their draw because of this.
Yeah, and they'll lodge a formal complaint that'll be stashed away and never looked at by the NFL.
Yep. Let's get to picking these games here, which is the reason here. I mentioned our friend Dan DiMartino here last week. He went 1-2 on the week. His win was on the Jaguars laying the 4 against the Texans. They wanted to run away. He had the 49ers laying the 5 in Vegas, ended up being overtime because it's the Jarrett Stidham experiment working so well for them. You had the Panthers +3 too. That looked like it was good for a bit till Tom Brady decided, I'm just going to figure out how to throw it like Evans today.
Yeah, well, Dan's a golf guy, so, 1-2 is probably what we should expect.
Yeah, I had a better week. I went 2-1 on the week. I took your team, laying the 3.5 points. I said, Dan, this game's going to be over quickly. I was right, so got that one right. I had the Packers laying the 3. They won that one, blowing out the Vikings. I took my team, too, laying 2.5. That was my loss. Unfortunately, my team just completely, crapped the bed. Is out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I was expecting a little more of a fight from the Jets. Mike White kind of had a tough go of it. But Seattle's a tough place to play, so.
It is a tough place to play. On the year, the Challenger team is 24-26-1. I'm 22-28-1. Not good year either side, but it's going to be tight heading into the playoffs here. So, as the guest, you can go first. Where are you going to go with your first pick of the week? All
right. So, first game I wanted to talk about is the first game on Saturday. It's Raiders home against the Chiefs. I know the Raiders are eliminated. I know the Chiefs are playing a lock-up home field, but a rivalry is a rivalry. If you remember the first game, the first matchup this year, it was one of the best games of the season, with the Raiders coming down, scoring a touchdown, having a chance to tie it. They ended up going for 2 to try to win it, and Derek Carr got stopped on the goal line, and they ended up losing by 1. I think 9.5 is a huge number for an away favorite in the divisional game. I like what I saw to sit him enough last week to expect him to keep it within 10. Give me Raiders +9.5.
I love that pick, too, especially with how shaky Kansas City's defense has been, how sloppy they've been against some of these lesser teams. I mean, Last week, they let the Broncos make Russell Wilson actually look good again. So I would not be shocked this game is closer than the 10-point spread.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, where are you going to pick 2?
For pick 2, we're going to go with the second game on Saturday, and that's the game that should have been on Sunday night. Jaguars -6.5 versus the Titans. The old saying is there's no such thing as a lock, but this game feels about as close to it as possible. Titans are a little banged up. I know they're getting Derrick Henry back, but they're going to be running Josh Dobbs out there. There's a hungry, determined Jacksonville squad who's about as hot as any team in the league right now. I see this being a classic passing of the torch game. Tennessee's dominated the division the last 2 seasons, but they'll inevitably hand the reins over to Trevor Lawrence, who looks poised to be the face of not only Jacksonville, but the division for the next decade. I think the Jags win this one easily.
Yeah, I like that pick, too. I feel like this has sort of been a runaway train for the Jags here. Tennessee, since they fired the GM, has just been a complete free fall here, so I feel like the collapse being complete feels appropriate.
Yep, for sure.
All right, where do you go with the last pick of the week?
Can anyone seriously pick against Buffalo after what they experienced on Monday?
Yeah.
They're not just playing for seeding or pride or to knock out a rival from playoff contention, which they would do if they beat New England. They're playing for one of their brothers, who almost quite literally gave his life playing the game they all love. I imagine this one stays close for about 8 minutes, just like Giants-Colts last week. And I think it resembles something of what we saw in the wild card matchup last season. I'm going to go Bills by 1 million.
Yeah, I feel like, especially now we heard that Damar Hamlin's father talked to the Bills. They said he wants you guys to go play. This is like what he would want you to do. I feel like they're going to come out very inspired. They're going to blow the doors off the Patriots.
Absolutely. I mean, this is more than football for these guys right now. They're playing for their brother. So I just can't see how the Patriots have a shot.
Yep, that's for sure. And Bills Mafia, too, going to be backing this team up big time.
Oh, without a doubt. And, you know, especially since they still even have a chance to lock up a 1 seed, or maybe not. Yeah, if Kansas City happens to slip up, you know, against the Raiders somehow, who knows? If they lose, if the Chiefs lose on Saturday, this place is going to be going crazy.
All right, so you're on the board now. Up of my picks, pick number 1. And I'm going to go with the game involving 2 teams that are not in this at all, but I'm taking the Texans getting 2.5 in Indy against the Colts. And I watched the Colts last week. I watched the Colts on the Monday night game after Christmas here. They put me to sleep both games. I cannot take them seriously. They're going to show up and actually put an effort in this game. The Texans have been feisty. Texans have been playing hard. Even if they get the number 2 pick, the Bears already have a quarterback, so they're not going to be dealing with the risk of losing out on Bryce Young here. I think the Texans go out and win this football game outright. So I'm going to take the 2.5 points to Houston, pick 1.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think the Texans are, just a better coached football team, obviously. They're a team that has a little more hunger going into the last game of the season. So I agree with you there.
Let's pick 1. Pick number 2. I'm going to take the Steelers laying the 2.5 against the Browns at home here. And based on the schedule here, they are playing at 1 o'clock. So they're going in the kick, knowing they still have a shot at this game here. Laying a field goal, less than a field goal against a Browns team that has not been very good. I know they beat the Commanders last week. You can see that Carson Wentz throwing the football to them like every chance he could. I think Pittsburgh here, they're going to finally get Mike Tomlin to extend that streak of not having a losing season. So they're going to still be alive at the end of the 1 o'clock window. I don't know if they're going to be good enough, depending on if the Jets show up against the Dolphins here. But I'll take the Steelers laying a 2.5 for pick 2.
Yep, I was going to say the same thing. Steelers haven't had a losing season since 2003, and I don't see them breaking that streak.
That's pick 2. Pick 3. I feel like it's just all set up here for the Packers, laying the 4.5 on Sunday against the Lions here. I think Seattle's going to win. I think Detroit will come out. They'll play a little hard, but I think it's one of those things where, like, Green Bay gets out hot. Detroit's going to kind of, take the foot off the gas once they realize, what are we doing here? We're going home anyway. Why not? Why kill ourselves this game? I think this ends up being a Packer rout. I remember 2009 with the Bengals Jets on that game when the Bengals had nothing to play for. They played for about a quarter and they gave up. I think the same thing's going to happen here. Packers by 1 million, your words. So pick 3.
My heart hopes that the Lions just make this a great Sunday night classic football game at Lambeau. But my head is kind of starting to agree with you, Mike. I hope the Lions will be able to at least make a half of good football, but it could get ugly in the second half.
All right, so to reset the picks for the week, Phil's taking the Raiders getting 9.5 at home against the Chiefs on Saturday. The other Saturday game, Jacksonville laying 6 at home against the Titans in the AFC Championship game. And the Bills laying 7 at home against the Patriots. My picks, the Texans plus 2.5 against the Colts and Indy. The Steelers laying 2.5 against the Cleveland Browns. And game 272, the Packers laying 4.5 at home against the Detroit Lions. Those are your picks for Week 18. We are closing out the regular season. Next week on the picks, I'm going to be joined by our good friend Phil Freyer's going to be here for Super Wildcard Weekend. We can talk more about the Giant game or whoever they're playing.
Let's hope it's Minnesota because I don't think we have a shot in hell against San Francisco.
I mean, right now I feel like the mask is sort of hold up that way because I think Arizona is not going to show up in that game. I think San Francisco will lock up the 2 with the win today.
Exactly. Fingers crossed. But crazier things have happened, Mike.
Absolutely, Phil. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.